outstanding tamales, which you'll even get to try. Hey. Doing well. I take it they're coming as well. It's a great audience tonight, though. Hey. Yeah. Yeah, I'll come back to you. I mean, they're still sorting something out over here. Hey, Rico, can we start at 7:05? I think she'll be okay. I mean, she's just going and sitting down, so. No. Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Hi. My name is Cam. I'm the producer here at the Green Space. It's lovely to see you all here this evening. This is the first of a very exciting trilogy of food-related and holiday food specifically related events here in the Green Space. I can see some of you have your jelly donuts in hand, which I'm very jealous of. Are there any members in the audience tonight? All right. Well, everything we do here is supported by you and the Jerome L. Green Foundation. Anyone here for the first time? Wow, quite a few of you. How'd you hear about it? On the radio. On the radio. It's a lovely place. Upstairs. So please come back. We have a whole host of new events coming up this month, so some of which I'll tell you about here shortly. As I mentioned, there are more holiday eats events. Next Wednesday, James Beard Award-winning author Dory Greenspan and the New York Times James Beard Award-winning food columnist Melissa Clark spill all the juicy details on making the best cookies. You might want to come for that one. And on December 18th, we have La New Yorkina founder Fanny Gerson, Vaughn Diaz, and the James Beard Cookbook of the Year winner Maricel Presilla, who will unwrap the secrets to outstanding tamales, which you'll even get to try. So these are pretty hot tickets. Act fast. For those of you who enjoy the performing arts, we have our last 44 Charlton, which is our favorite variety show. Also the address of this venue. This Friday night, it has SNL's Anna Gasteyer, comedian Dwayne Perkins, and avant-garde trio Qua Qua Qua. It's hosted by the sometimes salty, always sexy Julian Fleischer. Then, on Saturday, come back for Brooklyn-based sketch comedy troupe American Candy. They have a new show titled Worst Christmas Ever. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for, where I ask you to please silence your cell phones. Don't want to interrupt our wonderful guests and our wonderful host. We are live streaming this video tonight, so it'll be available on demand on our website after the event. And on that note, during the Q&A, we're going to pass you a mic, so please wait for the mic before you start speaking. That way the folks at home can hear you. And enough of me. Let's get this show started. Coming to the stage, Zahav's Michael Solomonov and Stephen Cook, and your host for this evening, Smitten Kitchen's Deb Perelman.
You never go out first.
What? Really?
You're supposed to go out first.
But you're the big deal. I'm just asking questions.
Hey guys.
Hi. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I have 400 questions for you this evening, so I hope you came ready. We are here to talk about Hanukkah, which means that we are here to talk about fried food, which I am all for, and we're here to talk about miracles. Let's see. Did you guys brought donuts tonight, right? I didn't get a donut. Where's my donut? Did you bring donuts?
I don't know. I saw donuts out there.
Okay.
I didn't get to eat one. I think, yeah.
I'm gonna see if I know anyone who can get me a donut later.
Sure I can probably get you a donut.
All right, you guys are gonna bear with me, right? Because I'm really stuffy tonight, and you should all just take your cold medicine after being in a room with me. Sorry. So let's talk about Hanukkah, which I have to be completely honest. I've not been in Hebrew school in like 25 years, and so I have to brush up so I can pretend to know what I'm talking about with my kids. Do you experience that at all?
You know, I asked Steve. I think Steve still knows what Hanukkah's all about. But I mean, it is a pretty fascinating story. It's just what I find to be funny, and now especially with kids, is that in terms of important holidays in Judaism, Hanukkah is actually not one of them. But we have to compete with Christmas here. So it's like, cars driving on the street with giant menorahs, jelly donuts, chocolate, latkes, and I feel like it's this sort of it's an amazing story, I think. Steve, you still know this story.
Help.
Right? Steve, can you tell us what it is?
Doesn't everybody know the story?
What happened?
Everybody?
Was it the Assyrians or no?
I don't know. Somebody related to the Greeks.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Maccabees.
The successful Maccabean revolt against the Greeks. Look at me.
It was the Greeks.
I'm a human Wikipedia page right now. So what's the deal with the fried food? Why do we eat fried food? I mean, I personally like to eat fried food.
Because it's delicious.
Yeah, I mean, fried food is the best food. But
when the Greeks sacked the temple in Jerusalem, and the Maccabees were putting it back together and cleaning up, they found oil to light the menorah enough to last for one day. But the resupply would take a week to get there. And this one day of oil lasted 8 days, which is one of the miracles of Hanukkah. And therefore we celebrate by eating donuts.
I mean, obviously, it's a jump, but it works somehow.
It works, yeah.
So
if you skip to the end and it's like, God wants us to eat donuts, it's all good, Yeah, but what was the menorah? What did they need lit?
Well,
They were underground, right?
No, they were back in the temple at that point.
But what was the point?
They were cleaning up. I believe there's the everlasting light. I believe the menorah was always lit. I believe that it's constantly lit. I wasn't around back then. But, I think we're on the wrong panel.
I love how I just bounced it over to you guys. I definitely know what I'm talking about over here. So I grew up eating latkes, but I did not grow up eating donuts for Hanukkah, and I feel like I kind of missed out on that, and I feel like it's more of a Sephardic thing, isn't it? It's more of a... Did you guys grow up Team latke or Team donut, or did you get both?
We grew up with both, definitely.
So mad
but
at
I
my
feel like
parents right
donuts
now.
are sort of alternative, and I feel like donuts in general are a pretty new thing. Actually, isn't that was sort of State of Israel creating jobs, right? Sufganiyot were marketed that way.
Yeah, I mean, I never had sufganiyot growing up. Only when I went to Israel during Hanukkah for the first time, and every single bakery starts making donuts, and they're like in every window. That's when I realized what I was missing. But,
Yeah, I was super mad about it. I love jelly
I
donuts.
do think it was
I
a
definitely didn't get
State of
them.
Israel marketing effort.
No, I think that was to combat
Yeah.
unemployment, wasn't it? Yeah. So jelly donuts are relatively new. Latkes, everybody has been rocking out for a very long time.
All right. Well, you guys are the experts on donuts, after all,
Clearly,
among other things.
right.
I mean, you do have a chain
not,
of donut
right.
shops called Federal Donuts,
We do?
which people call it like Fed Nuts.
Fed nuts?
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
popular that it's just been shortened. People don't want to say all the syllables.
Right.
What
They're
made you guys
too
get
lazy.
into? I know, it's just so much work. Just give me the donuts. What made you guys get into donuts? Like, what was it that you wanted to have donut shops? Besides the fact that they're like the perfect food.
So Steve and I had a restaurant. We had two restaurants that were pretty big, just coming out of sort of the recession, and we weren't making any money. And we met two guys that had brought like Stumptown to Philly, and they wanted to open another cool coffee shop, and they wanted to open a donut shop. And while that was happening, and we were having these like sort of hypothetical conversations of what a donut shop in South Philly would look like, because we found this space that was like 600 square feet, next to nothing in rent. And we were like, well, this would be a great place to lose the remainder of the money that we have. We were eating tons of Korean fried chicken. And we were like, well, coffee, donuts, and then we'll do chicken because we already have a fryer. And we're also like, what the hell? We're going to go under anyways. Let's just do it, you know? So 5 of us put a few $1,000s into a pot, and we opened, and Steve and I did all the development in the basement of one of our big restaurants that was making no money. And we were making donuts and then coffee and then eventually this twice fried Korean fried chicken. And on day one, we ran out of everything. We ran out of donuts in the first hour that we were open. We ran out of chicken before the line had even finished. We had not enough chicken for the line, so we were frying up like little pieces of it and giving it out to everybody and telling dirty jokes to the whole line.
There was no miracle that day.
It didn't last 8 days. It's okay. I don't think anyone really wants an 8-day-old piece of fried chicken. Yeah, I remember when I first heard that you guys were opening these fried chicken and donut places. I'm like, is this heaven? Like, how did they know that this is like the two most amazing foods on earth? Because if it's just a donut shop, it can be too sweet and heavy. You need a little balance.
You need fried chicken, obviously.
You need fried chicken. It's for balance.
Everybody
like,
likes either coffee, donuts, or chicken. So, and we did those, and I think that was also a moment in our sort of company's ethos where we were like, we just want to make a few things and make them really, really well. And that was it. It was just like hot, fresh donuts. Has anyone ever been to Brown's in Ocean City, New Jersey?
No.
It's this great place. It's open for like 3 months out of the year. If you surf or whatever, you wake up early, you come out from the ocean, and there are these hot, fresh donuts that are like conveyored into like what is probably fake honey, but like delicious nonetheless. And there's just nothing as good as that sort of hot donut, and that's sort of where it came from. We put some Turkish spices in the donut batter, but it's a very simple batter, and it's just these beautiful hot, fresh donuts.
And that's what, because there's the donuts that are prepared and they're beautiful and they're
Fancy.
artistic, and then there's the more rustic ones that you fry up to order, which are like
Yeah.
the best thing. Because the first time I went, I did, as a person does in the year 2017, is I Instagrammed it, and I like my comments were just filled with people yelling at me for getting the wrong donut, that I hadn't ordered the hot and fresh one. So I had to return to Philly.
Yeah,
and
huge
it was
mistake.
completely worth it. It was completely worth it. So I mean, all the donuts are good, but the hot and fresh is like it's a whole experience.
They're definitely less Instagrammable, but they are quite. There's nothing as good as a hot sugar donut. I mean, there's just nothing, especially now that it's like a little bit cold. I had one this morning. It was delicious.
All right, so you have an all fried. You have like basically the most Hanukkah place on earth. You have an all fried chain of places, and so we should talk about. We've promised to discuss latkes tonight.
Okay.
What's your feeling on hand grating versus, this is like the great debate at Hanukkah. Like forget what Hanukkah's about. Do you hand grate or do you machine grate? I mean, I feel like there's this martyrism built in that you're supposed to like hand grate or you're not really showing your devotion to the food, but I love using a food processor. I think it makes much nicer latkes.
I
Where you
made
guys?
latkes on Sunday night. Actually, Mike and his kids came over to our house.
Aw.
And I was getting the kitchen ready, and I took the grater out and I put it on the counter, and then I did some other things, and I looked at the clock. I got out the food processor.
Exactly.
I do think it's probably. I think I like the texture of the box grater a little bit better. I just think it's. I don't know. Maybe I just need a different disc for my food processor, but
It's possible.
I think they're both very, very good. We're talking about fried potatoes. And
I
so-
mean, it really can't go wrong with
Yeah.
it. So you, in your new book, your latke recipe has leeks in it, which I'm so excited about. What made you guys decide to go with leeks instead of the traditional yellow sobbing onions?
That's a pretty Balkan situation. It's called prasa, and leeks are a really, really big thing. My family's from Spain, but Bulgaria and then Israel. And leeks and potato pancakes are just amazing. They're super sweet. Onions are awesome. They have so much water in them. Mm-hmm. And I, on accident yesterday,
on accident.
it was on accident. I made it on accident. I had to use dried onions in my latkes because in addition to my food processor being broken, I had the box grater, not enough olive oil. I had 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and I
Did it
had to
last?
fry latkes in coconut oil with a little bit of olive oil.
How was it?
Delicious, but but the dried onion thing, I was like, oh right, this is why fresh onions don't work that well, because they're delicious and they're sweet and they're sometimes sour, but all that additional water is not super good. So I feel like the leeks are a bit concentrated and they give a vegetal quality to the latkes that isn't like adding kale salad to something to make it cool, to make it Instagrammable. But and I feel like they're it's a pretty unique flavor as well.
I feel like there's 2 latke teams. Also, besides the grating, I feel like some people like them more like, I don't know, more like a hash brown, almost like more mashed, like a mashed potato.
Yeah.
Almost, and then they're kind of wrapped with this shredded,
Yeah.
and then I like it more like. I like it to look like little ropey mops, like a mop of potato strands, and then they get really crispy.
Yeah, my mom was the type of person who would say something super judgmental, and then right after say something to the opposite of that to say how non-judgmental she was.
So what did she say
But
about
one
your
thing she
latkes?
could not abide was fried mashed potatoes, masquerading as latkes. So I
You
took
all
that
have to
from
take
her.
a stand.
Yeah, I like the really thin, lacy ones. Yeah.
I like it too.
Those are great, but your house smells something awful afterwards. There's no way to
Yes.
avoid that.
How do you feel about skillet-sized latkes?
I think
Versus
those are roasty
individual.
potatoes. I don't think those are latkes necessarily. We are guilty of doing that at Zahav, though. We make them in I guess they're 10-inch or 8-inch maybe all-clad pans because you can make them super thick, and we only use potato. We do potato, salt, and then that's it, and then just tons of oil, and you flip it, and it's just like a perfect pancake. And then you can cut them into nice wedges. So, it's not. I feel like they're eating. When you get the tray of 100 greasy latkes. I mean, there's a satisfaction to that you cannot achieve with a giant, perfect
Mega
roasty,
latke.
but it's still.
But I love it for. Do you guys do brunch? Because I love it for.
We don't do brunch.
Okay, because I
no.
feel like brunch latkes are really I don't think I'd ever make hash browns. I'd only make latkes for brunch.
Yeah, I mean we've got the rooster. We've got a deli, and we do a lot of latkes for that as well. I mean they're sort of perfect, and you can really add kind of whatever you want to them. But there's nothing as good as just crispy salted potato. It's just sort of perfect.
All right. So are you guys team applesauce or are you team sour cream?
I don't know if we have enough time. I don't, this is crazy. I've been eating latkes plain very recently, and I think that I'm sort of into that. I have to say, not to peddle our book, which is amazing,
I mean, that is kind of what you're hearing.
but we make an apple amba. Amba is the mango pickle that, went from India to Iraq to Israel, and I think that is a really good savory kind of application to it. I think applesauce is fine. It just seems a little bit weird to crack open a jar of applesauce and put it on something that you've made. But I like to use labneh a lot too, and dice up apple and fold it into labneh, so you get kind of the best of both worlds. And it sounds everyone's like, ooh.
No, it sounds really good.
I added truffle oil to it, which I would make fun of myself for doing, but I did that. It's going to be on TV tomorrow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I would definitely. My husband's family is Russian, and they put sour cream and caviar on it. You know, Russians caviar is
They
just
gotta
a
go
Monday
big.
night thing. They got to
Yeah.
go big. No, they I mean they use the
Little vodka.
the orange. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We have done many years of Latke vodka parties. Now we have kids, so we have like Latke go to bed early parties. We're totally as fun as we used to be. I don't know who said that. But I think they know how to do it though. Like they don't mess around. They start like heaping it on. They bring what's the orange stuff called? You can tell I don't eat it. The salmon
flying
roe.
fish
It's not
roe?
like they're bringing out like black caviar or
Yeah.
anything like that
Oh,
on
yeah.
a Thursday. They probably would though.
They would. Yeah. Once the kids graduate from high school, then you break out the good caviar.
How many years is that? Okay. All right. Let's talk about jelly donuts specifically. Yeast or cake.
Well,
Does that make sense when I say that? Do people know what I'm talking
It
about?
does.
there's the cake
Would you like to
donuts,
answer
and then
this
there's the.
one?
I feel
I'd
like
love
jelly
to answer
donuts are
this
usually
question.
yeast donuts. Is that how you guys make them too?
Well, yeah, sufganiyot traditionally are yeast donuts. Unfortunately, when we opened Federal Donuts, we decided our first decision was we're only going to make cake donuts, which just makes it a little bit awkward around Hanukkah time. But we have a version of sufganiyot that is a cake donut that we fill the ring hole with jelly.
That sounds delicious.
So it's sort of like our version of sufganiyot, but traditionally they're sort of like the yeasted donuts with no hole.
Does anyone come in and they complain that it's not a yeast
All the
donut?
time, yeah.
Are you serious? I was joking. Like, who would complain about a donut?
Israelis,
really?
yeah.
and then they come to Zahav when we actually serve yeasted donuts, and they also complain.
Oh my God, can we talk about this? I'm sorry, I love hearing the craziest things people complain about. I know you don't want to like unload on your customers, but like if you have a favorite story or like even your top 10, I mean, I've got time.
I think that like ethnic food is really personal to people. So there have been points when I work like the bread oven. So every customer, I can see them and they can see me, and you have to pass the oven to go to the bathroom. So inevitably, I'm going to run into you while you're
You're gonna say
going to the
something.
bathroom. Yeah, that's weird, right? And so there was a time where there was an Israeli family and they were Moroccan, and they came over and they were like, I guess it was like the father was like, this is not how you make Moroccan carrots. And I was like, in Hebrew, I was like, I'm so sorry. What's your favorite? And he's like, my mom's. And I was like, so in Hebrew, I was like, well, listen, do me a favor, tell your mom to come and show me how to like make it. And so she was at the restaurant. And he brought her over to the pass, and she was like housing me in Hebrew in front of my entire team. But they I mean, we were like kissing at the end, but it was pretty outrageous.
My theory is that people just want to know that you're listening, and so I think the fact that you think they
I
just
think
want to
no. I think that at the end of the day, and we're all guilty of this. It's like nobody's gonna ever make like chopped liver, borregos, like whatever it is. Nobody will. There's a context that you just cannot replicate, and I think that's what it is. It's like the food that my grandmother made. I will follow her recipes. I'm a trained chef. We have an entire staff of people. We have better ingredients than she had. My borregos will never be as good as hers. Which is a shame because hers were like super good, but and I will never be able to compete with this guy's mother's carrots, and I certainly won't while she's in my face like housing me.
during dinner service.
Yeah.
When you're probably just trying to finish up. All right. Let's talk about, I love this. There's a little section on every single Jewish food. We're going to keep going. Let's talk about Rugelach because they are my favorite cookie. And you guys make it yeasted, don't you? Which is more Israeli style?
Yeah.
I've always made them with the cream cheese and the butter and more like the cookie dough, the flaky cookie dough.
That's how I grew up too. It's
Okay.
like melted ice cream in the dough. Have you ever had that?
No, what?
Yeah, you would, like
Something else to be mad at my
take
parents
a
about.
pint of vanilla ice cream, let it melt, and then put that in the dough. But I think the yeasted dough also comes from.
We're like, whoa, go back to that.
I don't have.
What's it smell like, Steve?
But the yeasted dough, I think, is also European. I think there are
Okay.
two versions of European cookie. But what's interesting about what happened in Israel was you have these European pastries, and they meet sort of the Arabic, kitchen or bakery, and so you have these yeasted rugelach, and then they saturate them with syrup, so they're like super gooey and
They're like little babkas almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so that kind of like thing that really can only happen in Israel. Rugelach is a great example of like how that cuisine has like come together to take two different things and merge them into something new in Israeli.
I love in your second book, your current book, you have this whole section on falafel, which I was telling you. I mean, you really want to impress this guy. You should tell him that you made falafel for the very first time in your life a couple days ago. I'm like, I can't believe I'm telling you about falafel. But yeah, I made it for the first time on Sunday. And of course, I did not read the section until afterwards, or I probably would have made it a lot better. But I imagine that with falafel in particular, it's something that's just, you're probably not going to make it right for anyone, but it's always going to be, because there's so many different ways to make it. I mean, some people use fava beans, some people use chickpeas, and some people use green onion, some people use white onion. How did you come up with your method?
Well, I think that, again, it's like the one falafel shop that you grew up with is kind of what dictates the perfect falafel. And there's a place in, I went to boarding school in a town called Pardes Chana, which is like kind of north. And there's like an even smaller town behind it called Karkor. And there was a falafel shop there called Devora Falafel, like Deborah's Falafel. And they make their own pita. And it's not like salad bar. I hate that about falafel shops here. It's like somebody makes you a perfectly good sandwich and then you take it apart and stuff a bunch of vegetables into it. Like, that's not how you build a good sandwich. And what I thought was so interesting about this place, in addition to I was 16 when I went to boarding school, and up until, last year when we were filming this book, the same guy, the son of Devora, was making every single sandwich that ever went out. So his hands were like, they knew the perfect bite of falafel, but it was just fresh falafel balls, simple. I don't even think there was like anything. It was like chickpeas, salt.
Oh, we met Benny.
Yeah.
We went to a very good falafel shop in Tel Aviv, run by this guy Benny, and he has two ingredients in his falafel. They were they look like tater tots. They were like pale and golden. It was chickpeas and salt, and he has these crazy theories about what happens to herbs when they hit a certain temperature and they're not good for your digestion.
Wow.
And they were delicious,
That's incredible.
Ours has a few more ingredients to it. But like Mike said, I think it's like whatever falafel shop you went to when you were in Israel, that's what your definition of perfect falafel is.
Yeah, and we add a couple things. Like we grate carrots into our falafel.
I saw that, and I thought
which
it
make
was,
them a little sweet and earthy, and add like a little bit of hydration to them. And
which I definitely needed in mine on
which is
Sunday.
good. Everyone's used to dry falafel, I think, but I think that the secret to falafel is just fresh falafel, and that's something here. And we were talking about this also in the green room. It's like our idea of like what pita was 20 years ago in the U.S. is not what pita is. It shouldn't be dry. It shouldn't be paper thin, and it shouldn't be in the back of like a supermarket for like a week before you purchase it. It should be made fresh. And the same thing with falafel. You could take soaked chickpeas, grate them or grind them with salt, and drop them into hot oil, and they will still be very good when you eat them like right out of it.
That's something you guys do at I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Dizengoff? Am I saying it right?
Goldie. Yeah.
Wait, what's the place you have in Chelsea Market?
Dizengoff.
Okay, so I didn't say it right, but you
R.I.P.
guys do the
Yeah.
Sorry,
Closed it. Yeah.
Oh no, well
You're killing it.
Oh, I'm really. No, it's so good. You guys did the fresh pitas
thought it
there,
was
which was
very good,
incredible.
too.
Well,
Very
it was
good.
perfect. I hope it comes back. But so do you do fresh pitas at all your restaurants?
We do, yeah. We do fresh pita we have 2 Dizengoffs in Philly, and we have 3 Goldies, which are falafel shops, and we make fresh pitas for all of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you ever make falafel with fava?
No, I don't. I don't make falafel with fava. That's. I think up until recently, Steve is the falafel researcher. When
These are totally selfish questions because I want to make it some more, and I want to.
In Israel, they stopped with that, right?
Yeah, I think there's some sort of like genetic dietary
Yeah, the
thing about
Yemenite Jews, I
digesting,
think,
can't
eat-
digest fava beans. But the original falafel comes, we think, from Egypt,
Mhm.
and they originally were fava beans. And in Egypt, I think, and other parts of the Middle East, you still find fava bean falafel. I think it's less common in Israel.
That's awesome. So, this second book, you guys, I mean, you have always focused on the cuisine of Israel and Zahav and your other restaurants, but in this book in particular, you really wanted to get into this idea of Israeli soul food. Did you entirely write it when you were in Israel, or did you just spend a lot of time there researching?
So what we did so Zahav was about Israeli food, but it was through our perspective, through our restaurant in Philly, and it was like our history of opening the restaurant, my family's history, the history of Israel, and then with Soul, we just convinced our publisher to give us a bunch of money, and we just went over to Israel and
That's awesome.
shot and ate, and Steve wrote the book. You know, I don't know when he even started that, but I mean, it really came together, I guess, at the end. I mean, I remember looking on the bus while we were, you know, we had 82 meals in 8 days.
Oh my God.
And we'd be like on the bus, just like, you know, trying to tap out. And Steve would be like messing around with like different chapters and like kind of rewriting the book. So.
You gotta write it when it's fresh. You have to write it
Right,
when
just
it's
like
ready.
falafel.
Yeah,
It's
we
gotta
were
be hot and
rewriting
fresh.
the table of contents like as we would go from stop to stop. The book sort of came together. I mean, it was not written on the bus, but
No, but you have to write it when it's when I've written recipes and books. The worst mistake I make is not writing about it immediately when
Yeah.
it's fresh in my mind. And like 6 months later, I realize a recipe is missing a head note, and I cannot remember that much, like what the cookie tasted like or the dish. So you're doing it.
took a lot of
Probably
notes
the
on my
smart way.
phone.
I love the way the book is laid out, though. It feels very much like a textbook. It's like colorful and it's not the traditional cookbook structure. It isn't like, it's not formulaic. It's got a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you have this feeling of travel, of being in a travel magazine, but also it feels like a little bit of a textbook where there's like different modules and stuff. And
Yeah,
I
we're
love
big
it.
fans of textbooks.
Did you have to fight with your publishers to get such an unusual format?
I don't think so. She's over there.
Were you like, we have this idea
that,
for, I mean,
no.
because in general,
No.
you would have to explain it to them if
We
it's
had
not.
we had
yeah.
a great. We have an amazing team that put the book together. Dorothy Kalins, who's amazing, has produced all of our books in addition to founding Sever. I mean, she understands books, and we've become friends and got to work with Don Morris, who is brilliant with layout and design, and Mike Persico, who's our really good friend, photographer. He and I have been friends for a decade. He helped he shot Zahav, and he's been eating at Zahav, the restaurant, for a decade. So he's like already been sort of invested in Israeli cuisine. We just let him off the bus and just shot. So everything that you see is sort of with this perspective of somebody that has never been. There's so much discovery, I think, in the photography. So there wasn't a big fight with our publisher. I mean, we had an amazing team putting it together.
That's awesome. I'm sure if you've been book touring for a couple months that you've been asked this like 52 times, but I haven't gotten to ask it yet. Do you have a favorite recipe in the book, or just one that you feel like especially proud of? Like you worked so hard on it and you feel like this is the recipe?
Well, I don't know about work so hard on it. I think the opposite. But we have a recipe called 5-minute hummus, which seems to be people seem to be interested in that recipe, and we demo it a lot, and it actually does work in 5 minutes or less.
What's the secret?
The secret is like, if you've ever tried to, I mean, if
Move
you've
fast
ever
as
opened, you get Mike to like just yell at you until you finish.
One person with a megaphone shouting.
But if you've ever opened like a jar of tahina, you know it's almost like 3 separate things. You have oil on top, you have like nice tahina, and then you have sludge on the
Sediment,
bottom. And if you're asked to measure a certain quantity out of that jar, like
Such a
forget
pain.
about it. It's a mess.
Such a pain.
And it's like not water soluble. You can't like wash it off. So we built the recipe around a single jar, so you don't have to worry about any of that. You literally dump the jar in, recycle it, and you build this tahina sauce in your food processor, which is the only thing that gets dirty in the process.
Okay.
And then you can use that sauce for for a million different things. And then to finish it, you just drain 2 cans of chickpeas, put them in, process it for 30 seconds,
That's awesome.
and it's done. So the Zahav cookbook has the recipe for the hummus that we serve in the restaurants, and it's very, very good. And it's not that hard, but if you have to think ahead to soak chickpeas overnight, if you have to cook chickpeas, which can take anywhere from like 45 minutes to 23 hours, that can add a little bit of time to the process.
You don't Instapot your chickpeas?
I don't have an Instapot. We have a giant Instapot at the restaurant. But canned chickpeas get a bad rap, but they're really they're fresher and higher quality in general than what you can buy dried in the stores, because you don't have no idea. They could have been sitting in a warehouse for 18 months.
So I like to peel my chickpeas when
do?
I'm crazy, but I'm not making restaurant-sized portions.
Yeah.
I'll use canned ones. It doesn't bother
You
me
just
at
peel
all.
it.
I just like popping them out of the skin.
That's crazy.
And I feel like it makes the smoothest. I feel like it makes the smoothest hummus.
It
I
does.
mean, in a home non-Vitamix food processor, you can do a really nice job with it. However, I discovered recently that probably something that a lot of other people knew that I didn't, which was that at an Indian or Middle Eastern grocery store, you can buy split chickpeas that are already
Shelled.
without skin. Yeah, exactly. And then when you use that, you could actually use it fresh and then make it. But I'm not going to teach you guys about making hummus. What was a recipe that you loved, or just an idea, a concept that you weren't able to work into this book? I'm waiting for my bonus pamphlet.
I don't think there was really anything. Our goal was to really capture everything that we saw and felt and sort of ate and process it through the tiny ill-equipped kitchen in my one-bedroom apartment. And that was kind of the way that we put the book together. So I think that it wasn't really about it would be great if we could make that, but we can't. It was like, how do we synthesize this feeling or this dish and then make it something that's attainable? So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's a very big book. You probably got to fit in everything
Right,
that you
like
needed to.
Rack of pork didn't make it to the dish.
All right. I actually just before I came here, I read an article on what you keep in your pantry. I know people love to write these articles about food.
Yeah, it's
people.
super,
And
very
it was like almond butter and rice.
Yeah.
What do you make? I mean, you probably do not come home from work hungry because you work at a restaurant and you're
Yes.
cooking all day. But if you were at home and you needed to make something, what would it be?
So it would be rice, and we have a friend of ours that makes beef jerky. What is Fidel's? It's like side project
jerky.
Side project jerky. So I have, and he has a pho flavored jerky that's amazing. So I will mince that up, and saute it in tons of oil, and then whatever I have at the farmer's market, like onions, carrots, and then do brown rice with that, and it's pretty good.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, and then I'll eat almond butter for dessert over my sink. Because I'm a celebrity chef.
But that's real. That's how most people eat
It's
at
real.
home. Most people are not
Super real.
so real.
Yeah.
You do Instagram it?
No, I think that's how you lose followers. I don't know. Steve is the excellent cook of us too. I mean, Steve also has 4 kids, so he's cooking for an army.
You probably don't get away with just making some rice and almond butter when you
I
get
eat
home.
a lot of rice, actually.
Do you use a rice cooker or do you cook it on the
No,
stove?
I like to cook it on,
Wow.
I like to,
I love my rice cooker.
You do?
I do. But I also was somebody who always burned rice. I think it's because my stove runs too hot, and so I was
Yeah.
always scorching it. And so when I got that, it was, you can make it and eat it an hour later. It's perfect. It was.
Yeah, I don't know. Cooking rice is really, really difficult, so I like the challenge. But yeah.
I appreciate you saying it was difficult because
It
I
is.
feel
It's-
like
I
for
think
most
it's one of
people it's
the-
the very first thing they learn how to make.
But I think it's one of the hardest things to cook really, really well. I mean, anybody can boil rice, but to make
perfect.
perfect rice is not easy.
Do you rinse?
I do.
I have gotten into washing the rice. I never
Yeah.
thought I would, but once it's just one of those things when you start seeing how murky the water is, you're like, oh, that's why.
Do you ever peel the rice?
What? No, stop. Only my chickpeas. All right. Let's see. We've talked about Hanukkah. We've talked about latkes. Steve, did you grow up in Israel too, or just
No.
okay? You've just spent time
Grew
there,
up in South Florida, which is like a suburb of
a suburb of New York.
or Tel Aviv.
That's hilarious. But I'm assuming you've spent a lot of time there with.
A decent amount.
How did you guys meet?
We were both cooks in Philadelphia. We had heard of each other because we were probably the only two Jewish cooks in Philadelphia in 2001. And it turns out my fiance at the time, my wife, grew up with Mike in Pittsburgh. And I had a small restaurant at the time and was looking to like hire a chef. And Shira was like, you got to meet Mike. And I think we actually lived next door to each other for a year and never met. So we met for like 20 minutes and I guess hit it off. I don't know. And yeah, I mean, like we had a 20-minute cup of coffee / job interview, and then we started working together, and that was, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago.
Are you partners in all your restaurants?
We are.
That's awesome. All right, let's talk about chicken schnitzel, because you apparently have suggested this for a Hanukkah menu. Why chicken schnitzel?
Well, why not schnitzel? It's delicious, and you can fry it, so you're participating. You're participating in Hanukkah. But I think that it's delicious. It's super iconic and kind of like Israeli street, but really, really satisfying. And it's one of the things that every child will eat. I think
like large chicken finger.
it's a giant
giant
it's a
chicken
giant
nugget.
chicken finger, and you can.
Is chicken the traditional meat to use there?
Well, chicken in Israel is because the country was like super poor, so they didn't have. There was no veal, and chicken was pretty abundant. So, and if anyone has ever visited Israel on low budget or even high budget, it's schnitzel on a bus or in a gas station. Actually, some of the gas station eating in Israel is amazing, I have to say. But like chopped salad and steamed rice and schnitzel with like tons of tahina is just as good as it gets.
That sounds
Could be 3 o'clock in the
amazing.
morning, could be 1 p.m. in the afternoon, always good. And the method that we love is by actually beating eggs, and instead of going flour, egg wash, breadcrumbs, just soaking it in the egg wash, and you can put spices in there. We prefer a Yemenite soup spice called hawaj. It's like turmeric, cumin, black pepper. And so what you're doing is brining, and you're seasoning, and then when you take it out of the batter, or out of the egg, just like the beaten eggs, you just kind of roll it in breadcrumbs or matzah meal, and you get the thinnest, crispiest schnitzel ever. And it also totally contradicts what every European culinary school instructor taught me, which is that you should always flour, egg wash, and breadcrumb. So
It's so interesting.
it's so many levels it works. It's so good.
Do you soak it in the egg with seasoning for a long time? Is
Yeah,
that because
you
I
can
was
do
going
it
to
for-
ask you how you keep the chicken from getting dry, but if that almost brines it a
Almost
little
for
bit.
you could stick it in there for like hours, and
Wow.
it's amazing.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, really good. So paprika works, smoked cinnamon, black pepper, whatever you want. Really, really
I
good.
want gas station schnitzel now. You know, I was told in Texas that the best food's in a gas station too.
We
Have
had
you
great,
had good Texas
we had good
gas
barbecue,
station
and we had some good barbecue in Texas gas stations.
I had really good I want to say kolaches.
Kolaches,
yeah, they
yeah.
were like amazing from this
Yeah.
gas station. It's like a thing. The gas stations are like bigger than a Walmart,
Kolaches are like a Czech, like pastry thing, right?
which are huge in Texas.
Sounds like
it's
sounds
the
like-
funniest thing.
In the improper context, it sounded like a disease. You're like, I got great kolache from a gas station.
You should
I'm like,
definitely
you
not
could
go
get
back
some
there.
ointment also at that gas station.
Seriously, I did I was book touring last year and I was in Texas and I did Hanukkah shopping at a gas station.
Really?
There was no, they're like toy stores. They're like crazy big. It's a thing. Everything is huge in Texas.
Big. Did you tell? Were you like, I'm going? Excuse me, sir. Where do I find the best Hanukkah gifts here in this gas station?
I should have. I really
Yeah.
missed an experience there. So we wanted to leave some time for people to ask questions if they have any questions. Sorry, I haven't even looked in this direction. Hi. So if you have any questions,
Be a party here, or gonna have music?
are you gonna dance?
We're gonna lift
We're gonna dance.
somebody up on a chair.
So we'll see about the party.
Celebration, isn't it?
I feel celebratory. Do you feel celebratory?
So celebratory. Yeah.
Hi.
The question is, what's the secret for getting a reservation? Well, I'm gonna give everyone.
Oh, can you? Okay. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna give you guys Steve's cell phone number. So you're good. No secret.
I told him that's why I did this event, because I can never get a reservation, and I'm hoping I'll have some in now, but we'll see. I've only been once, but I have. Of course, I decided to go like 3 hours before. I'm like, we should go down to Philly tonight.
So
and we'll
if you show up
Zahav.
like at 4:30 or 4:45, usually we do bar seats first come first serve, and a chef's counter, and that's the way to do it. And then also, like email the restaurant and say, I'm coming down to
awesome.
Philly for this weekend. Preferably not the weekend that's directly in front of you, and then it should work out.
Awesome. Is there a microphone? Or yeah, awesome.
Or just like knock on the back door at code word kolache.
Hi, Chag Sameach. Thank
Chag
you for
Sameach to
being
you.
with us. A couple years ago, we watched In Search of Israeli Cuisine, and I had been to Israel many times, but that was a turning point for me in really feeling more connected to the layers of the individual and the shared narrative that you were imparting to people watching about your family and otherwise.
Thank you.
And thank you. And the conversation today has really focused more on where you are in the States and business and capitalism and the book tour and so forth and recipes. And I'm wondering how you stay connected to that internal purpose, that sense of why, which really came across so clearly to me in the documentary and helped me understand Israel in a different way.
Well, I think that Steve and I both, I'd like to think that our values are kind of what drive us. And we have 250 employees and we have to be business minded, but I don't think we would have opened an Israeli restaurant if it wasn't, being able to market and represent or explain a country that's very often misunderstood. So I don't know. I think it's just, I guess it's not hard for me to stay connected to it because it's kind of like one of the most important things in my life, And we go back a lot. We're going back in February and doing a culinary tour. I was there in August with my son. Steve was there in the summer with like his entire family in a tour bus, and we go back a bunch. And all of our restaurants, I mean, for the most part, with the exception of Federal Doughnuts, are related a little bit, or a bit to Israel. And we have a couple more projects coming up in the summer that will also capture a little bit of the experience of eating over there. So it's, it's sort of on the front burner all the time for us. Thank you.
Could you repeat that into the microphone?
Do you have any favorite Israeli restaurants in New York?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good ones here. I like Nor a lot. Mimi's is really good. Anat Edmoni's new place, Kishkash, is great. What's Eden's place? Des is good.
Yeah, Taboon.
Taboon is awesome. Barbunya is awesome. What else? Yeah.
Timnah, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I haven't been there yet, but I heard it's awesome. It's really good. But I mean, Philly is like an hour and 10 minutes away. It's like Bed-Stuy to Union Square. It's the same distance. You can't get a reservation? Yeah, I'm sorry. Kolache, code word.
Hi.
Hi, so we actually do have a reservation next Saturday, so I'll be sure to go to the ladies' room this time to say hello.
That sounds fun, huh?
I have you've obviously, at least from my perspective, have had a tremendous impact on the view of Israeli cuisine now within America, and lots of folks that have tried to emulate, but I think haven't quite reached that level. But I'm curious if you've seen a shift in Israel in terms of sort of their reaction to what you have done with Israeli cuisine?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that what is interesting, and I don't think this is a reaction to what we're doing, but I think that the idea of what modern Israeli cuisine is, or this idea of taking all the different cultures and different gastronomies and putting them together, and therefore having this Israeli table, I think is what is so important. And I think for a very long time, well, even today, if you go to Israel and ask to go to an Israeli restaurant, I think people will be like, I don't know what that means. But, there's literally 100 different cultures and gastronomies that make up that cuisine. And for a long time, people would leave that tiny country to come to the States or to go to Europe or to go to Asia and to cook. And then they would go back to Tel Aviv and open up a restaurant that reflected a country that they were just visiting. When a grandparent one could be from Poland, one could be from Yemen, one could be from Ethiopia, one could be from Georgia, not Georgia here, but Georgia over there. And I think that at one point people just stopped saying, well, why do we have to make other food? This is what the Shabbat experience here is enough. So I think that probably in the last decade or so, 2 decades, but definitely the way it's been marketed in the last decade, I think has been really significant. And people say that all the time. I mean, we describe our Zahav as being a modern Israeli restaurant. There's nothing modern about the way that we cook. We cook like meat on sticks over charcoal, or flatbreads in like a wood-burning oven. But the idea of looking, sort of from the outside and putting all the different cuisines together and then doing it globally, I think, is what makes it modern.
Hi. So I read an article about you in which you described some of the essential things that you carry around at all times. And one of them was a copy of Shulam Dean's book, All Who Go Do Not Return. He's a friend of mine, and I'm wondering how has he influenced your work or your life's mission or anything like that?
He's a great author, and his story is really amazing, and his book was awesome. I mean, at the time, I read it, and then I don't carry it anymore, but, and we grew up very differently, obviously, but I just found his story to be really fascinating, and his words and experience, so honest, and, if anything, there's a certain modesty and vulnerability, I think, that he sort of shares in that book that is really fascinating. He's great. Tell him, I've never met him, but tell him I said what's up. Is he still wearing dad jeans or no? Yeah? Okay. He talks about wearing dad jeans in the book, and not my words.
All jeans become dad jeans eventually.
That's
my theory on all jeans, at least.
Super deep.
I'm sure by the time I'm wearing them, they're mom jeans. Did we get to all the questions? Oh, hi.
There was a mention of a film, I thought, that was connected with the book. Am I wrong? Did I hear wrong?
There was a...
do you have the... is the mic around? Can you
okay.
Other side.
There was a mention about the film with the book. There was a documentary that the person that produced our book, Dorothy Kalins, her husband, Roger Sherman, is an amazing documentary filmmaker. And the reason we met Dorothy was because of the time that I spent with Roger shooting a documentary about Israeli cuisine.
So that's the film you're referring to?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You have other restaurants in Philadelphia.
Can you speak? I'm sorry, it's just because they're recording. They want us.
You have other restaurants in Philadelphia. There's a world behind Zahav. Mm-hmm. And I say that personally because I've eaten in all of them. But would you share for 2 minutes the backstory with each restaurant and then also the Whole Foods scene? And do you think you would come to New York at Whole Foods?
Whoa.
Steve, you got this one, right?
Sure. So we have a restaurant called Abe Fisher, which is, I like to think of it as the inverse of Zahav, because Zahav looks at the world of Jewish cooking through the lens of Israel, things that came back, cuisines that came back to Israel and were shaped by being in Israel. And Abe Fisher is more what happened to Jewish food as it went into the diaspora and was influenced by other host countries. More, I would say, more Ashkenazi. We have Dizengoff, which is our hummusiya, which is just hummus and fresh pita. We have Goldie, which is our falafel shop. We have Federal Doughnuts, and then we have a Jewish deli diner called the Rooster, which our partner. We have a nonprofit partner in that restaurant. 100% of the profits from that restaurant go to support feeding and providing services to vulnerable Philadelphians. And I don't think we're going to come to Whole Foods in New York. We're pretty happy in Philly right now. But it's only an hour and 10 minutes away, so I think that covers it.
Awesome. Did we get to all the questions? Oh, there was another one. Oh, hi. Right over there.
Okay, so I have a question, and it might be a dumb question, but something that I'm not Jewish, but I struggle with, should I be cooking what is considered Jewish food, not being a Jewish person? Because how do you pay homage to this? Like, I like eating the food. So my question is, how do you take this and try to make it your own and not like culturally appropriate another culture's food?
You can cook whatever you want. We're totally good at that. Yeah, I think this is Steve. Steve, I'm going to take your answer to this, which is, I think, brilliant. I mean, we practice hospitality and inclusion, and I think the moment you start putting boundaries and you alienate people because of like food that they're making is a huge problem. And food is, by design. I mean, food just changes, and food changes hands, and food also doesn't really lie in the way that it has moved around the world. So I don't believe in the idea of like cultural appropriation when it comes to food. I think it's just a way to, for us, it's a way to like be anti-Israel when people say that that's what we're doing, and I don't accept it. But like I said, you can cook whatever you want. Nobody here's going to judge you. What's going to be the first Jewish food that you make?
I was thinking about making hummus for a party on Friday.
That's a great choice. Yeah.
And there was another question. Is the mic around? Thanks.
You spoke about being on the bus for this book that you just did. Was there a route, not a physical route, or just a way of deciding where you were going to go to for your ultimate goal of finding people to cook with and the recipes and what ultimately became the book? I mean, I know you ate 80 some odd meals in 6 days or something like that. So
Right.
how did you figure out or decide where you were going to go and what were you going to do?
I mean, the amazing thing about those 82 meals was only 2 of them were no good. 80 of them were fantastic, which I don't think you could have said about 82 meals in Israel maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I mean, it was a mixture of places that we had been before and loved, places like that Mike grew up going to in boarding school, to things that we visited. We've taken over the 10... Zahav, before we opened Zahav, we took our key managers to Israel to show them, to help, so that they would be able to talk to the guests about what it was like to eat in Israel. We took them to experience it for themselves. So, we visited some of those places that we had been before, but it's such a fast-moving food scene there that, every time we go, there's new things that we've never even heard of before. And we have our friend Avichai, we talk about in the book, is a tour guide who has developed sort of a focus and an expertise in culinary tours, and he also had a lot to say about where we stopped. And in some cases, we stopped in this town Hod HaSharon for this pretty well-known falafel shop there, and we ended up parking the bus. We ended up overshooting it by about 2 blocks. And in the 2 blocks that it took us to walk to that falafel shop, we stopped at 3 other places that we just saw. So I think, you can, you can do that there, especially in the cities. I mean, there's just so much good food to eat. It's sort of hard to go wrong anymore. But the book has, you could eat for a month in Israel just with the restaurants that we feature in the book.
I guess following up on that last comment, is there any
corner. Is there any dish or thing you like absolutely need to eat before you leave Israel? Not necessarily like on the way to the airport, but you feel like you can't leave before you eat it.
On the way to the airport, I definitely will pull over and insist. I don't know. There's a couple restaurants that I have to go to. One is Opera, which is a Yemenite restaurant in Hadera. And it could be 105 degrees outside. I still need 2 gallons of Yemenite soup. There's a restaurant called the Abu Michel, which is in Lud, where my dad grew up. And it's a great restaurant. And I don't know, a bag of bamba. I need a couple of those. Borecas. What about you?
I agree with all of those.
Yeah. Usually we go over there to only eat, so it's not, it's part of the whole.
I like it when it's crembo season too, which are
Crembo
do you
season.
guys know what crembos are?
Yeah.
They're like if Malamars were good. But they only have them certain time of the year because it's so hot.
That's right.
There's a restaurant on the Upper West Side called Zagala's. It's owned by an Israeli Druze. Have you eaten there or heard of it?
I've heard of it. I haven't eaten there.
And is there any difference between Israeli Druze food and Israeli food?
Yeah, there is. Druze food is mostly it's Levantine, but it's Upper Galilee into Syria and Lebanon. And Israeli food is North African, Yemeni, Balkan, European, but brought to Israel by the Jews, plus Palestinian from the West Bank, Druze, Gazan, and then Egyptian. So Druze food is amazing. So good. The former deputy consul of Israel, but in Philly, was Druze. So we went to his, that was for the first book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or it was for the first trip we took.
The first trip.
Yeah, we took this culinary tour. We had 8 chefs, and Joan Nathan, the writer, was with us, and we had chefs from all over the States, and then 20 other guests, and we ended up eating 5 meals a day for 8 days, and then we ended up at Rosalan, at the deputy consul's house, who's Druze in Carmiel, and had the best. His mother and aunt made the best meal I've ever had. It was so good. I will. I will try it. Yeah.
If we're good on questions, thank you so much for coming. And you guys
Thank
will
you.
be signing books in the lobby, or we sign books? Their books are for sale.
Books
in
are
the lobby.
signed.
Okay.
And come to Philly. Come to Zahav and say hi. All right.
Okay.
And have a good Chag. See you. Thank you.
Thank you.